Tonight's lecture is a lecture that anybody who's involved in nutrition fears. Because it's about the hardest lecture to give in the current environment or the world in which we currently live, where what we used to think we understood about food has just been blown to little pieces. I've read very disturbing books about how we have come to believe what we eat is good for us, how we've been manipulated and sort of guided along the ways we should think, and how we've been helped to decide what is healthy food. We've alluded to some of the things in the past too, where I've said since the 60s and 70s, it's interesting to see how food and nutrition policies start to become government and political decisions based on economics, based on clarification of thoughts and ideas, and started moving away from medicine and started being sponsored by big pharmaceutical companies and big food industries. So there's some beautiful slides that just show you how many of the companies in the world are owned by groups and littler groups and smaller groups. There's probably 10 little companies that own everything. And it's definitely in their interests that you eat as much junk as possible, as often as possible. Because all their stuff is junk. Junk means not essential. Doesn't mean not nice. Okay, we all know that. Okay, even I like a McDonald's milkshake, even though knowing what's in it helps a bit not to like it. Even I like deep fried chips and Kentucky Fried Chicken, but knowing what's in it helps me to feel I'd rather not. Or maybe stop after one piece. But you just go with rather not. So junk food, the point of junk food, it's a name we made up after years of just the development of this industry of foods that are quick, easily available, and extremely cheap. And that was a real driver of how these foods were produced. So these foods have become so cheap that in the United States, a lot of the foods are produced from corn oils, fructose, which is derived from corn, bio oils derived from corn, cattle are fed corn and lucerne. And it's actually become such a problem. The overproduction of corn is that a farmer in the United States of America today cannot make enough money from the corn that he sells to plant corn the following year. So the government subsidizes all of the corn farmers. So if it costs 10 Rand to produce a ton of corn, he can only sell it for 9 Rand. So no farmer in the United States of America can make money out of selling corn, and yet it's an ingredient that gets used across the board for almost everything. And the reason it's being driven by government to generate this cheap food. So America's got some of the cheapest food in the world, which is not really the point of today's conversation. But cheapness and convenience and transportability and pouring something out of a box, manufacturing and processing has driven a lot of the thinking of how we eat today. Because most of us that eat bad food, you know, it's always on the day when I didn't have time, I was too tired, I didn't feel like it, I couldn't be bothered, and 9 out of 10 times that's the day you have something you know you shouldn't have. So convenience has driven us, and the convenience food, sadly, is not expensive. I'm sure if Kentucky cost double what it costs, you know, more like Nando's prices, you'd be more likely to just stay down, well, let's just quickly make something. Because often when you make something, how many times have you done this, even in the last few weeks? You think, weet jy, ek raak nie lus vanaand om iets te maak, nee? Let's just go down the road, make sure we don't see Dr. Fourie anywhere, and then stop in at the Kentucky. And then somebody in the house with a conscience, normally a 5-year-old, the same one that tells you, you mustn't smoke, my teacher said. You know those ones. Okay. So the doctor says you mustn't eat Kentucky. Okay? Because they are all over there, little consciences. And you go, oh, all right, let's just make something. And you whip up something, fry some chicken breasts. And after 15 minutes, you eat something, you say, that was actually not so bad. And it only cost a little bit, and it wasn't so much effort, and you feel much better for the decision. You've all done this, haven't you? And you go, I don't know why we even did that. It's just these little momentary lapses. So these are very familiar feelings to drug addicts, which you all are. Okay, not drugs, food. Because this is what happens with an addiction. An addiction spends a lot of time justifying the decisions that it makes. I'm going to do it because, just tonight, just the last time, just a bit, just this one. Every time you use the word just, it means you're just about to do something wrong. So the word just, it normally is going to make you late as well, because before I go, I just have to do this. That'll make you late. In the casualty units, we used to joke about how many injuries arrived with the just story. I just was going into the roof to undo this thing. I just was climbing the ladder to cut the last branch. I just was going to race through the robot at the last minute. Just that last little thing you do is the thing that kills you. I had a guy who just went into the roof while his wife went to the shops because he just had to move the geyser, and just as he moved it, it still had water in and it tipped over and it just rolled on top of him and just poured out over him. While he was in the roof with nobody at home, and he basically had to wait for 150 liters of boiling water to pour slowly over his body till it was light enough to lift off of himself, at which time he was unconscious. So, because he just quickly wanted to do something. So, be careful of the just thing. That's how you know it's going to be a mistake. Okay. That's got nothing to do with tonight's thing. That was my prelude. Did you like that? It's like, okay, so what I did want to talk, so this is just because I'm so scared to start tonight's lecture. All right, people. Oh, wait, this is never going to work like this. I'm just, it's going to go like that now. I only wanted to procrastinate because I'm very afraid. So tonight's lecture, I've decided to title, What About the Fibre? And I'm sorry, I don't get it. So we're going to talk about these guys, macronutrients. So have you heard of the word macronutrient? If you haven't heard of it, you certainly tasted it. So this is what we thought, until about not very long ago, we thought this is what food was. We knew about carbohydrates, we knew about proteins, we knew about fiber, and we knew about fat. Can you sense why I'm afraid? Because from this slide on, I don't actually know what to say. So I'm going to just make a whole bunch of stuff up now, and you kind of go with me, because the world is confused. So let's talk about some of these things. What we do know is that carbohydrates are known as these things. Sugar, which can be called lots of different things, monosaccharides, disaccharides, starches, or oligosaccharides. It's got to do with how many carbon atoms are in your sugar. You get long ones, you get short ones. You get magic mineral ones called glyconutrients, which are sold by a company that cure polio, leprosy, and cancer. So they don't, right? So they don't. But you do get a company that sells this product that's essential sugars, that they tell you that your body, they use the word essential sugars, your body doesn't make them, and you don't get them out of your normal food. You have to buy their supplement, which I sell. So these things are nice. Sugar is what started our original search for nice tasting food. We are drawn to the taste of sugar. We are drawn to the sweetness of it. Honey is probably one of the very first foods that man took a little bit of risk to actually acquire. Climbed a tree, killed a badger, fell out of a tree, said, I wish I just hadn't gone up there. So we want sweet stuff, fruit off the tree. There's a reason we like fruit. It's because of the sugar and the sweetness in them. It's the carbohydrates in your fruit. An interesting thing is that the carbohydrates change, and fruits that are ripe are very sweet because the carbohydrates become more loosely bound, and when you bite it, the juice drips and it tastes sweeter. When a fruit is not ripe, it contains more fiber, which doesn't dissolve as quickly in your mouth, which is why unripe fruit or green fruit tastes bland, horrible, chewy. Not nice, because we're not supposed to eat it yet. In other words, that it's not in that plant's interest that we eat it, because if the seed is not ready to be planted somewhere, it doesn't need us to eat it or destroy the fruit while it's still busy growing. So they generally don't taste nice. The sugars we find the most common are the sucrose, which is a combination of fructose and glucose. And I'm not going to go too much into how it works in your body. We've talked about sugar. I think we all fear sugar. It's basically death, tax, and sugar. That's what you've got to be scared of now. And not even in that order. That's what's so bad about sugar. You can work that out. Lactose. This is a very common sugar that we don't realize that we take in, just your common milk. And maltose is an interesting sugar because it's a combination of two molecules of glucose. Glucose has got 6 carbon molecules in it, so it's the base of a lot of our sugars. Fructose has also got 6 sugars, and carbohydrates, galactose as well. They often come in pairs. So maltose is something that we find in beer, which is why a lot of men end up with a beer book, because beer is just really a whole lot of sugar. Sugar's everywhere. Somebody actually posted something on Facebook to say that one of the sports supplement drinks has got no sugar in it, but it's got something in it called maltodextrin. Now, that's sugar. So if anybody's not sure, just check with me. If it tastes sweet, it's got sugar in it. So some things are used to taste like sugar, but even they are forms of sugar. So even your sweetness, xylitol, saccharin, stevia, are also carbohydrate compounds that give a sweet taste on the mouth. But some of them have got a bitter aftertaste, which has to do with other substances in them. The carbohydrates, just very briefly, digested in the small intestines, and virtually nothing happens to your carbohydrates in your stomach. It has to basically be digested by your teeth, broken up here, passes through the stomach, and most of the work done on carbohydrates is done in your small intestine through the work of these enzymes, pancreas enzymes. Through enzymes, these are the names of the notice the lactase, maltase, sucrase. Guess what they digest? You could all be doctors in the next 30 seconds. Just wait. Okay, have you worked it out? It's amazing, huh? I don't know how they came up with these. So this is what they do, and it's almost like every carbohydrate that the human being is supposed to eat has an equivalent enzyme in the pancreas. An interesting one is this lactase, because we know that up to 30% of the population has an inadequate lactase production. We don't produce lactase. But it's interesting that very little research has been done on some of the others. So although a lot of us here think we are lactose intolerant, or you've heard the word lactose intolerant, can't digest the lactose, the sugar in the milk, because we don't have this enzyme, the truth is you can have deficiencies of all of the enzymes in the pancreas. You can be sucrase deficient, maltase deficient, and any number of about 8 or 10 enzymes, which sometimes all need to be replaced, which is why some people don't tolerate carbohydrates well. So you might think you're wheat intolerant, but you might just have a deficiency of a pancreas enzyme that's not being produced enough to digest that carbohydrate. You can buy digestive enzymes. You get plant types and animal types that will help you to digest carbohydrates. If you say, when I eat, I feel bloated after the meals, it's often because you're missing one of these enzymes. So it's something to try, and it's really cheap to try. And it might work especially on those days when you've eaten something you didn't need to eat. You know, when you just bought a boerewors roll, because they were really cheap. So we went to like a fun run, and they just were giving away boerewors rolls at the end of the thing, free. And so I just had a few. It was very nice. So, and then I went home and had digestive enzymes to keep me healthy. Energy. In South Africa, we talk about kilojoules and kilocalories. We tend to more use the kilojoule type of energy count. Kilojoule has to do with how much energy a thing can produce. It's based on a chemistry experiment where we heat something up to work out that's how much energy it gives off, and we call it a kilojoule. It's not really what happens in the body, but it's the closest thing we have to knowing, well, how much energy do we get from a thing? How hot does it make our body? Half of the food you eat is to fix and patch you up, and the other half is to keep you warm, to keep you at your body temperature day and night, to keep your blood pressure controlled and to keep your brain working. So a lot of our energy is burnt as heat. So you get 4 calories per gram of carbohydrate or 16 kilojoules. That will become important just now. How much carbohydrate should you eat in a day? Based on the diets that we're teaching you, it differs enormously. So you have a Banting type diet that wants less than 10% of carbohydrates of your diet. You've got a paleo diet that allows 10 but up to 30% of carbohydrates in your diet. You have Mediterranean diet that can go up to 40% of carbohydrates, and you've got the World Health Organization food pyramid, or My Plate, or South African, not the Medical Council, our guidelines that allow you to eat up to 60% of your meals as carbohydrates, decided by politicians, not doctors, not nutritionists, not farmers, politicians, based on fears mostly of heart attacks, interestingly enough. So even though only a couple of us in this room will die of heart attacks, every meal that you eat has been decided according to its risk associated with causing heart attacks, high cholesterol, and death. So by taking, we'll talk just now about the fats, we wanted to get rid of fats because we thought fats give you heart attacks. So to replace the fats, we made people eat carbohydrates. So up to 60% of your diet, the World Health Organization recommends from carbs. But we believe very strongly, as we've kind of chatted a little bit about, that your carbs should be decreased to a very small percentage of your food. Part of the reason is because a lot of the carbohydrates that we eat in the form of bread and pasta is additional carbohydrates that we wouldn't normally have gotten. Until agriculture, those things weren't even available. We used to get all our vegetables from carbohydrates and from roots, beetroot and carrots and potatoes. This word here, there is no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. Essential means if I don't eat this, I don't get it from anywhere else and I will die. There's no carbohydrate, there's no form of sugar that your body can't get from somewhere. And even if it can't get the carbohydrate, it's happy to use a different form of energy that's not glucose. So we used to think that the human being must have glucose because your brain must have glucose to function. But we now know that the brain can use any number of things, but specifically something called ketones, which we'll talk about in one of our other sessions. So there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. Nothing. I've heard one person say the only carbohydrate that is essential is vitamin C, which is a carbohydrate. But other than that, there's nothing your body needs from any form of carbohydrate ever. So you could drop, in theory, to 0% carbohydrate. It would be exceptionally difficult because as soon as you bite into anything living, plant, there's carbohydrates in there. Even your fibers, which we'll talk about, are kinds of carbohydrates. There are carbohydrates then. In our program, we've told you, the BetYaLife people, you can separate your carbs, good carbs, bad carbs, not good carbs, bad carbs. Separate your proteins and your carbohydrates. So we've said, okay, you can still have carbs, it's too hard to give up. There's a book called Good Carbs, Bad Carbs. There's a book called Good Calories and Bad Calories as well, which is why I made that mistake. So you see how I just made up for that. It's all true. Low GI forms. So if you're going to eat carbohydrates, we kind of accept the fact that there's certain types of carbohydrates that are better for us and there's certain types that are worse for us. So the sugary types, there's pretty much no diet in the world that thinks you should be eating cupcakes as part of a healthy diet. I think most of us realize the effect of cupcakes on our health and on our weight in general. The cupcake diet was an abysmal failure, and we'll never run that again. So whole forms of foods versus processed foods. As soon as your carbohydrate is processed and changed, modified, or fortified, in other words, it's been changed and put in a box and vitamins have been added back to it, synthetic vitamins, it has become useless to your body. So we are always going to prefer a whole form. If I have to give you a choice between bread and a potato, I'm going to prefer the potato. I'm going to prefer neither, but I'm going to choose the potato. I'm going to prefer something that's fermented or dense. I want something that fills you. So the problem with light and fluffy foods is that it doesn't fill you. It just goes in and in and in. And an hour later you go, oh, I shouldn't have eaten 3 pizzas. So because it just takes too long to like register. I've just eaten a little bit too much. So we want foods that make you feel fuller quicker. At least that's going to help. The fermented breads and foods are partly digested. You know when I talked about those enzymes just now? So your body sometimes can use foods that are fermented because it's already like they've been the body started digesting them. Then sprouted foods. Now this is an interesting thing. We're not supposed to eat seeds. Do you know what happens to seeds? They're supposed to go into us, through us, and out of us. Now, since a lot of us don't go and do number 2 in the garden anymore, actually, just by a show of hands, is there any? So the idea of a seed is to grow and to spread the plant around. Animal eat the seeds, animal defecates. Brilliant system. Seed plus its own manure, there it is. New tree grows. Everybody's happy. The Garden of Eden spreads. Seeds are not supposed to be eaten. So it's interesting that we think seeds are so good for us, but the truth is, if your seed is not ground up or in a fine form, it will do nothing for you. It will pass right through you and rip the toilet paper. Then, I just sometimes I say it and then I think about it. Have you seen the order? So, there are forms of things that you get. Rolled or steel-cut oats is a good example of oats that we grow. How do we now make oats? We can refine it to make oats so easy, because when they made oats so crappy, it didn't sell so well. So they make oats so easy. Just add water, eat in a minute. If you can eat it in a minute, throw it away and just eat the bag that it came in, it's probably about the same nutritious value. So you get these where they actually roll them out, but the whole plant is involved. So you're definitely going to get more out of this plant, and it's going to satisfy you for longer and keep you happier. Brown rice, or interesting, and I've added this, cold rice. I listened to a very interesting talk. A guy who runs a really nice program called something about Energize. Good. So that's a good reference. So please write that down. He's got a weird name and he runs a program something about Energize. You should Google it. So he actually said cold potatoes, green bananas, and cold rice are the 3 carbohydrates he still lets his people eat. And he didn't even give portions. He just felt if we need carbohydrates, and he felt we did, even people who are very strict banting feel that we should have, on maybe once or twice a week, we should interrupt our serious high protein, high fat with a bit of a carbohydrate boost, just to kind of keep the engine turning over. There's no science here. You get making this all up, eh? So this is a theory I've heard, which some of you might actually be doing automatically. So why don't you count the number of times you cheat in a week on your banting diet? What you might find is like you read the book. Have a piece of bread twice a week, or the cupcake, or some fruit, or something that you're not supposed to really have on the green, orangey red list. So there is something about missing your carbs. It's hard to go without your carbohydrates completely. It's a very difficult transition. And I must say, personally, I've preferred this kind of thing where more fats, not too much protein, carbs every now and again, but not a lot. And specifically cold stuff. Cold potato, interestingly, has a low glycemic index, so it takes a while for it to be digested. So he doesn't hate, you know what, it's just a thing about grains and carbohydrates. More than half of our industry, our agricultural industry, depends on oils and grains. So in a world of 7 billion people eating rice, millis, wheat, what's another one that's common? But did I say millis? Millis and maize, and wheat again, because so much of wheat, it's not going to go away, ever. There are not going to be people who come and nuke the milli plantations and land little cows for us to grow so we can all eat more fat and more protein. Carbohydrates, grains, will be with us forever. So I'm not sure removing them completely from your diet is the way to go, mostly because it's going to be really difficult. If I have to give you a choice, I say this: have the grains, but don't default to the grains. You know, if we think about how we eat wheat, when we don't know what to have, we have a sandwich. Toast for breakfast, something out of a box for convenience, or a takeaway. If you can find takeaways that don't have carbohydrates, you're doing well. Because it's very difficult. Going to restaurants, it's very difficult. Go to fancy places. It's just so hard to eat a sugar-free, carbohydrate-free diet. So are you doing the 30-day sugar-free? And how easy has that been? Dominique's doing a 30-day sugar-free challenge as part of a Sleek Geek group. Plug for you. How's it going?
It's pretty difficult.
It's pretty difficult. So you don't realize, a lot of us sit and go, I'm going to take sugar out of my diet. That shouldn't be too hard. I hardly have any sugar. Until you take it out 100%. And then you go, jeez, there's sugar in everything. And the same with wheat. It's easy to say you're going to go wheat-free until you actually take, and never mind, gluten. Once you hit serious gluten removal, you really struggle to know what to eat. Okay, so it's worth doing. The sugar-free thing is excellent, excellent. If you've never done a period of time that's absolutely sugar-free, it's well worth a try. I want to talk about proteins next. Proteins are the squishy bits of the meat, made up of 20 different things called amino acids. If you just quickly memorize this, we'll start in the top left. Okay, and so basically, the thing about carbohydrates and proteins, there's only a few simple differences. If you talk science, double bonds, carboxyl groups, and nitrogen here, and sulfur there. So this is the problem, and this is the criticism of proteins, is that if we eat too much proteins, we produce too much nitrogen, which essentially is bad for your circulation, bad for your kidneys. And that's what people said when Atkins first came on the scene, we're going to cause kidney failure. It was later completely disproved because actually the body just produces less nitrogen and you end up excreting the same amount. And unless you have major kidney disease, it doesn't affect your kidneys at all. So there's no risk in eating too many proteins. It's just that from a nutritional point of view, there's not a lot coming out of it. These things, amino acids are there. They're good for your own body's proteins and muscles, but that's pretty much it. There's very little minerals in your meat. This is what these amino acids look like when we stick them all together. So did you see how you take that and just squash it, and then you end up with that? Then you bry it, absolutely. Because the other ones are stringy, they get stuck in your teeth. So this is how we like our things. So interesting about these things are digested in your mouth and in your stomach. They get broken down by heat. So anybody who's tried to eat their meat raw, it takes a long time, not very successful. Probably quite nutritious though, but we're scared of our meat. So by burning our meat, we're killing the bacteria on our meat. There was an interesting expose on McDonald's meat because of all the fecal material they found in the meat on the patties that were being sold. But it was cooked, so it was sterile, it was clean, but there was just, a little bit of cow dung in there. Oh, you've all had it. It's yummy. It's the bits you go,
It makes you fat.
That's what makes you fat. That's true. That was the problem. So just wash your hamburger before you eat it. It should be fine. No insulin is required to digest proteins. It's all done by acid and something called pepsin and a few enzymes. Your body, interesting thing about proteins is that the effort it takes to digest, to chew it and to digest it actually uses up a large portion of the energy that it provides you. Now that's another big difference between carbohydrates and proteins. When you eat carbohydrates, 80% of the carbohydrate is available to your body to have to do something with. When you eat proteins, probably 40 to 50% of that weight of meat is used by the body to digest that piece of meat. So if you eat 40 grams of rice and 40 grams of meat, it ends up working out very differently in your body, in spite of the energy in it. So remember I said carbohydrates, 4 calories? Look at your proteins. Also 4 calories per gram. But it does a very different thing in your body. That's why we don't count calories anymore, because it's completely irrelevant. You can't compare a grape's calorie to a piece of fat's calorie, to a margarine calorie, to a steak's calorie. They're different in your body. Okay, fiber. Did you notice how little time I spent on protein?
Can we go back to that?
Oh, no. Okay, yes.
You spoke about rare meats.
Yes.
So what's healthier to eat? Would it be medium rare or cooked?
So there's really no evidence based on that except for two things. So I'm going to introduce a word into your vocabulary called polyhydrocarbon. Okay, so this is the black stuff that you find on your meat and what you find on your braai. Highly carcinogenic, cancer-forming. So enjoy your next braai. It is shortening your life with every bite. So overcooked meat, not good from that perspective. Then heated meat, the outside of the meat is obviously where the most bacteria and feces are. So that's the part you definitely do want done properly. So even if we say rare, we still mean well on the surfaces, and it's the stuff in between that changes. It probably doesn't matter, but in terms of nutrients and in terms of damaging proteins, when you heat stuff, you're breaking up proteins, you're damaging meat, you're losing a lot of your nutrient value. So probably a medium to medium rare gives you the best value per bite out of that piece of meat, because you're getting a bit of raw and a bit of cooked, not too much of the carcinogens, the cancer-forming stuff. If you're eating your meat well done, burnt and dry, you're probably just wasting your time. Just get an old slipper, have a chew, and move along. What you secretly have not realized yet is that you're a vegetarian. Okay? Stop wasting the meat. Good talk. Okay, thanks for allowing me to bring that up. How much protein should we eat? Well, we haven't got a freaking clue, have we? So we think more than 20% is probably not necessary. We can go up to 30%. A paleo diet probably pushes it up to 30%. So remember I said to you the difference between Banting and paleo is the amount of proteins. We both like low carbs. The paleo, though, likes game meats rather than farm-raised and grain-raised animals, and it prefers more protein. So we consider that to be a high-protein diet, whereas Banting is a high-fat diet. Okay, fiber. How much fiber do we need? I haven't got a freaking clue. We used to know. This was a very confident part of the lecture. The World Health Organization thinks you should have 18 grams of fiber every day. That was decided by the government in the 80s when they realized that the people were starting to put on weight. And so you know what they said? The problem with the food pyramid is not that we've taken the fats out, because everything was low fat by this point. So what did they say? Well, obviously we're eating low fat, which is obviously right. So everyone's getting fat, so it obviously means it's the refined sugars that are the problem. And the problem with refined sugars means we've taken the fiber out. So the way we fix this is put fiber back into food. So the World Health Organization made up a number to give us fiber, which we don't need, and there's no science behind the numbers that they made up. The book called The Diet Delusion, which none of you will read because it's this big, talks about it beautifully, and it's very scary how it just kind of became accepted norm, and we just kind of all fell in with it, and how I need my fiber today. Your children, he's not eating enough fiber. The truth is we've ended up creating bowels that are fiber dependent. So now what happens is you take the fiber out of your diet, guess what? Can't go to the toilet. It's Banting. Well, it's not Banting. It's that your gut has become so super duper lazy that it doesn't know how to function without the irritation caused by the fiber. That's all that fiber does. It irritates. It sucks fluid into your gut and it forces your body to excrete it. You can adjust to a fiber-free diet. Okay, so I used to say that fiber was important coming in. Fiber decreases the glycemic index of food. The more fiber there is in something, green bananas, the slower it takes to digest. A green banana versus a ripe banana, the difference is how quickly your body absorbs the sugar from that banana. It's the same amount of sugar, it's just one is tight in this fiber, the other one is loose and sweeter. Our diabetics often do better when we increase their fiber, but I think it's purely because it slows down the absorption of sugar from their meals. So it's not that they need fiber. Fiber definitely does help when it goes out, but it's based on an irritation factor. It's not necessarily good for you. You can compare fiber to wood. It has no taste, a little bit like Pronutro. So It actually is a carbohydrate. It's a very, very, very long chain of carbohydrate that the body can't break up. But we do get things called prebiotics. Inulin is an example of something like that, which your bacteria that live in your gut. Remember those billions and trillions of our friends that live inside of us? I hope you talk to them now. They like a bit of fiber, and they can break up some of the fibers, and they actually can survive on fibers. You get 0 calories from fibers. So in theory, that was the other reason they thought add fiber, because it adds no kilojoules. That's why you eat Kellogg's Special K, because it's like nothing. You could just pour it straight in the toilet if you want. Just skip the whole process. The only reason it's bad for you is because it's got wheat in it. And it's a very high glycemic index wheat. So is Kellogg's All Bran and Kellogg's High Fiber Bran, are they good for you? No. Well, we don't think so. But remember to catch BetYaLife 2025, because it might be good again. I'm not sure. So all of our plants have fiber. Anything that's chewy is fiber, all right? All of your plants have it, and you get 2 types, soluble, insoluble. There's your 18 grams. How do we get fibers in there? So basically, we've kind of decided, those of us that do this, is we try and get natural fibers. Raw foods and plant foods. Fresh foods, and the greener the food, the more the fiber. And probably that's not a bad fiber. Your mom always told you, if you had a peach tree, or if you had a mom, let's go with a peach tree, don't eat the fruit while it's green because it's going to make your tummy run. Did your granny tell you that? Or your mom tell you that? And then you did it to see if it was true. So it does, because of all the fiber in the fruit. Unprocessed foods, pips and seeds and skins of foods. So that's plenty of fiber right there. So if you're going to have your cold potato salad now, because I said it's okay, unless you're banting, then keep the skins on. Keep the skins on your carrots. Keep the skins on your butternuts. You don't have to throw these things away. They actually are worthwhile purely because it's a low irritation type of fiber going into your system. I use a product called EasyCol. It's got something in it called Aspergillus husk. It's a soluble fiber. If you need to use something, it's probably the safer way to go. It's less irritating to your system. But ideally, you want to get off fibers. You want your gut to get used to just working by itself. Okay. But there's no rules on that. Some people need lots of fiber. Some people need none. You must do what works for you. Make sure you do go to the toilet, though. That still remains one of the most important things. Let's talk about fats quickly. Have you still got energy? We got 10 minutes. Do you want to stand up quickly? Okay, stand up if you feel like you're nodding off. Fats. So let's talk about fat. Do we like fat? Yes, we love fat. What kind of fats are there? Saturated, unsaturated, trans. What does that mean? Saturated fats is what you get from animals. Saturated fats is a very specific chemical structure you don't have to know about, but essentially, saturated fat means it's solid at room temperature. Okay? That's how you know the difference. It's easily. Butter, lard, ghee. You can buy ghee at Pick and Pay now. I don't know how long it's been there. I've never seen it in my life before, but there it was, ghee. So ghee is an awesome thing to cook with. It has an exceptionally high, what we call smoke point. That means you can cook at really high temperatures and it doesn't change the taste of the ghee, which is a butter compound, or the food, which is different from olive oil. So the plant oils can all go up to certain temperatures. I read a very interesting book called The Big Fat Lie. And it, again, do you know that the government had to encourage the people? There was a time when they only used animal fats to cook with. It was absurd to think you can use oil from a sunflower or canola or safflower to cook with. Nobody did that. You cooked with butter, lard, or ghee. And so the government had to subsidize it, run an ad campaign to get people to buy a plant fat. It all came out of the wars when it was difficult to have butter, so they were sending meat and butter and fat to the front lines, and the people back home had to try to use other things to cook with. So you eat sunflower oil today because of World War II. Okay, that sounds like a good nutritious reason. What's really weird is how the circle goes around. Try and give my kids butter to eat. What do they go? Ugh, it's horrible. I want margarine. So it just went all the way around, didn't it? Now we think it's weird to cook with butter. It's weird to cook with ghee. What on earth is lard? That's like pig fat, isn't it? It's very interesting. We can't talk about that all in 10 minutes. So we have lots of fatty meats. The fatty meats have created something called the French paradox. The French paradox is the diet that the French people follow. Salami, sausages, bread. Have you heard of the French paradox? Do you know what they call the French paradox in France? Food. So we don't understand it. It's like, why are these oaks all so freaking skinny? And they have the lowest heart attack rates in the whole, not the whole world, but certainly in Europe. And they eat terrible food. We thought, but they just eat it a bit differently from what we do. And so they've kind of been one of the real countries that stood out, that disproved this rule that we used to have of fat makes you sick, fat makes you fat, and fat gives you heart attacks, because they don't got it. Full fat milks, creams, sour creams, and so all your animal stuff has got fats in it. Depending on how long the chain of fat is, makes it more soluble or more liquid. So the fat in milk is a different kind of a fat to the fat in the rind of your pork or on the meat. Okay, so what makes it more or less runny, but it's still saturated fat. And you know when you cook it out that it ends up in a solid block of something. Your non-animal saturated fats, so you do get saturated fats in plants, coconut creams, palm oils, and there's an oil called MCT. Have you guys seen MCT? It's a very clean oil. It's called a medium chain triglyceride. And you can buy it and you can put it in your coffee. Did we talk about the bulletproof coffees? Yeah. So some people just put MCT in it. You can carry it around. It's easier than having a coconut in your pocket, because there's so many questions after that. So basically, MCT, it's a very clean oil, easily absorbed by your body, and good for long energy burning, slow energy burning for the day. Unsaturated fats. So polyunsaturated fats, monounsaturated fats. Wait, where's that? So we used to think there's a difference between monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, saturated. One's very bad for you. Remember, saturated fat's very bad. Okay, now you can forget it. Do you want me to say that again? You don't even know what I was talking about. How long ago did you remember what I said? Okay, so we don't care anymore about the fats. We used to say good fats and bad fats. Guess which ones are bad fats? None of them. It's easy now. So just forget everything. If you want to play on your phone while I do this last part of the lecture, it's fine. So the oils and the fats you get in nuts, seeds, fish, algae, leafy greens. So plants also do contain a kind of a fat, but it has to be changed in the body. It's called linolenic acid. I hope I remembered it right. Linoleic or linolenic. Apologize for TV people. I might have to correct this later. But it's the same kind of omega-3s that you've heard about, but it has to be changed slightly. It's certainly not as abundant as we get in fish oils, which we'll talk about now. Krill oils. Polyunsaturated, and we'll find in these types of foods, nuts, seeds, avos. So how much avo is too much? Remember, you're only allowed half an avo. You're allowed 3/4 of an avo, 5/8, 16/21 of an avo. You can enjoy the avo. Have the skin, grow the pip, eat the pip. And I was just checking, see if you, because you didn't want to stand, so now I have to try and make up stupid things. So, good, we like these foods. You can eat them on their own, okay? What about this? Monounsaturated fats. I'm not going to get into the chemistry of why we call them these things, but just there are different things and they do work differently in your body. We like monounsaturated. This is what's the primary oil. But interestingly enough, we used to say this is a mono, this is a poly, this is a saturated. The truth is, when you look at oils in foods, that means we're almost finished. Almost, don't worry. Then it's always a mixture of all of them. There's no food that contains only one type exclusively. So that's kind of why that theory started to fall apart a little bit, because they said, well, you keep calling this a good one and this a bad one, but where do I get that one? There isn't anywhere. Zoe Harcombe is a nutritionist. We used to do her diet 6-7 years ago when we started this, and she did research which she has put in the British Medical Journal to change how we think about fats, just now, in February of this year. Okay, moving right along. Peanut butter. Peanut butter is a mixture of lots of kind of fats. Is peanut butter good for you or bad for you? Okay, bad, but not because of the peanuts necessarily. So peanut is a legume, it's not a nut. There's a difference in the kind of fat in it. The problem with peanut butter that you buy, Black Cat, is it's salt and sugar added to it, emulsifiers, preservatives. So that's the problem with peanut butter. Will you die if you eat Black Cat peanut butter? So far, so good. No. When you add syrup to it, you'll definitely die. But is it bad for you? I don't think it's bad. I like peanut butter as a kind of a craving breaker. I need something. Because it's got a little bit of saltiness, it's got the little bit of sugariness, it's got the little bit of oiliness. It's a nice craving cracker. I made that up. I want to use it again. So you don't have to have it on a cracker, because that would be a craving cracker on a cracker, which is really awesome. But I do like peanuts for that reason. But they're not nuts. It's different from a thing that grows on a tree. It's a legume. It's got a lot of omega-6s in it, which we'll talk about next. What is omega-3 and omega-6? So omega-6s is the kind of polyunsaturated fat that you get in. Wait, everything. All your plants contain omega-6 polyunsaturated. So all your plant oils contain omega-6 oils. So all the plants that we feed to our animals contain omega-6 oils. So we get in tons of omega-6 oils. In fact, I'll show you now what the proportion of it is, but this gives you an idea. Omega-6, lots and lots and lots of omega-6. Omega-3 found in plants, but mostly fish. We get in tiny bits. We're supposed to, well, at the moment, it's kind of calculated that we get 95% of our polyunsaturated fats are from omega-6s and 5% of our omega-3s. So we all know we're supposed to supplement with omega 9, 3, 9, 6. No nos. So stick with us, BetYaLife 2025, when we give you omega-43. But today, the good omega is omega-3. Not because it's better than 6, but because you don't get so much of it. You get loads of 6. Do you know what this ratio is supposed to be? Have a stab. Okay, good guess. 1 to 1. And we're getting it 95% to 5% is the ratio we currently get it in. So we have loads of the wrong one. We have loads of the 6 and just far too little. So there's a balance problem. And the problem with that is that omega-6s cause inflammation. Inflammation is when somebody hits my arm or punches me or drives over my foot, my body has to heal through a process called inflammation. When I have an infection, inflammation. Must have inflammation. It's a brilliant idea to heal things. Except when it doesn't stop, then it starts to destroy things. Or if it overreacts to everything that's happening to me. So over-inflammation, bad. That's what's wrong with 6s. It triggers an inflammation, what we call cascade. Omega-3 is anti-inflammatory. So if you have the right balance of something, one causes a reaction that starts the healing, and the other one causes the reaction that starts to take the pain away again. So that one breaks down the dirty, rotten, damaged material, gets rid of it. The other one starts to fill it up with new and healthy material. Inflammation, anti-inflammation, pro-inflammation. So we want a blend of the two. Where do we get our 6s? Vegetable oils, margarine, grain-fed meats. So how much do we get in? Tons. That's why we want farm-raised or pasture-raised meats. You might have a free-range chicken, but it's still been fed millies. So nutritionally, it's not really that superior to just a gewone chicken. Okay, margarine. It doesn't. If there's butter, is a kind of a blend of butter and margarine. It's still just got a lot of omega-6s in it. It's not butter. Vegetable oils that you've been taught to cook in is just omega-6s. They're inflammatory. You know what they cause? Inflammatory bowel diseases. Do you know what you call that? Spastic colon, irritable bowel disease, heartburn. Could be from this. Arthritis, eczema, any number of conditions from the oils that we're taking in, because we get lots of this in. Every time you eat something that's been baked, any kind of pastry, it's loaded with these vegetable oils. So we got very angry about trans fats, but but just by having the wrong blend of the right fats, we're even causing this imbalance. Our omega-3s, fish oils, krill oils, EPA and DHA is what's in them. Do you want to know what they stand for? Eicosapentaenoic acid and docosahexaenoic acid. I know, right? Just in case you wondered if I'm still learning. And also green vegetables, but low. We like DHA, very good for your brain function. EPA, very good for your heart and for your body and for healing. Anti-inflammatory. This is where your omega oils are. If I take a microscope right up to your skin and I look at the little cells in your body, they are the fats. They're called phospholipids. They have things called hydrophilic and hydrophobic. So they allow your cells to just stick next to each other and make up your body parts. So the difference is the fats from omega-6s. This is why they're bad. Are you ready? You're not going to understand a word. Just it's only because we're nearly finished. So this is a tightly wound little spring. It's called an omega-6 pro-inflammatory, the bad one. If it's in our cell membranes, it pulls our cells tight. The omega-3, if I had to compare it, would be a slinky spring. It's a loose structure. If you have a loose structure, it's more elastic. What I want in my body is I want all my cells to be healthy, filled with fluid, plump. If my cell is plump, all the things on my cell membrane, you see these blue things here? These are what we call receptors. These things allow things to pass from the blood into the cells where the body can use them. They allow insulin and sugar and anything that needs to get out of the cells, all the crap that builds up in your cells must go out through the cell membrane, or they must come in, the energy that must come in and out, sodium, potassium, the electrolytes. So when all your hormones that have to activate and work on your cells have to make contact with these things. So when you have a nice, full, bouncy, healthy cell, omega-3 rich, it means all these things are beautifully exposed. So it makes your hormones work better. It makes everything work better because your body is just sensitive. So a lot of people are so omega-6 imbalanced that even though they're eating everything right, even though the doctor says your hormones look right, your blood looks right, your thyroid looks right, it doesn't work because it doesn't have access to these senses. So it's like you're numb. And it's just from this omega-6 thing. So does it mean if you start eating butter today and chuck the margarine that by tomorrow you're going to be cool? It'll take a year for your body to slowly change, which is why this process is slow. It literally has to change every single cell in your body, which is why if you don't diet long enough, what happens? You start to just gain weight again. You guys have seen it. If you stop dieting on Friday night, Saturday morning you're picking up weight. It's the freaking omega-6s. I hate those guys. I think do you want to learn anything else still? Trans fats, don't eat food like that. If you do, don't come back here. But you're going to do it sometimes. Just make sure I'm not there. And if I'm eating food like that, just walk past. Because it does taste nice. None of us are stupid. Of course it's lekker. That's why it's there. Deep fried onion rings. Yummy. I like that. How much of your calamari like that? In calamari, rub it with a little bit of deep frying. That's the only way to eat it. So we like trans fats, make stuff easy to cook. It makes them golden brown. It makes them taste nice. Only while they're hot. Did you ever eat this the next day? Not so nice, eh? Nothing like squeezing that oil out of your chips. So, good rule for life. If you can't eat it the next day, it probably shouldn't have been eaten the first day. Baking, deep frying, long shelf life. So we made trans fats. We hydrogenate. We bubble hydrogen through our plant oils. So we made an exceptionally bad fat. Exceptionally bad. So because we just couldn't think what else to do. It drops your good cholesterol, raises your bad cholesterol, raises your triglycerides. It just gives you heart attacks. That's all we have time for this evening. Thank you so much for being here. And be here next week. Bring a friend. Well, I mean, if they've paid. But 6 o'clock next week here. We're not breaking. I know it's Monday's a holiday and Friday's a holiday. Do you know? You just found out. 2 long weekends next week. But Tuesday happens right here. Unless ESCOM decides otherwise. Thank you. I didn't say that. Slip of the tongue. Thanks very much, everybody.